Joining me now, we have Seth Jones, Center for Strategic and International Studies President of the Defense and Security Department, and Vera Bergen-Gruen, National Security Reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to you both. I'll start with that last point I was making to Inzamam with you, Seth. I mean, there's a lot of head-spinning new information on both the Strait of Hormuz, the expected resumed talks with Iran. I mean, on the talks piece, Trump says a delegation's headed to Pakistan. Iran seems to be balking to some degree. Can you even venture a guess what is true, what's not true, what's likely, what's unlikely, and whether the vice president is going or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the negotiations do look like they're happening. Everything we're seeing at the Serena Hotel and the advanced team of security that has landed in Pakistan indicates that negotiations are going forward. I mean, the administration has to negotiate now because I think what we've seen is the military option is not able to find a solution right now. It does look like all the indications are that the vice president probably will be going as the lead part of that delegation. But again, we're going to have to wait and see once he lands whether it's going to be him or not.
Okay, another thing. We have Iran saying, Seth, that it closed the strait. President Trump says that the U.S. closed it first. What is your read? And is this a standoff or is it posturing? And what concrete points can both sides agree on in this next round of talks?
Well, look, I mean, there is posturing on both sides, but I think the reality right now is when we look at the data is that that Iran still has about 40% of its arsenal of attack drones and upwards now of about 60% of its missile launchers that it can use to fire anti-ship cruise missiles at boats coming through the Strait of Hormuz, in addition to mines and the fast attack boats that the Iranians have. So the reality, regardless of the rhetoric we're hearing on both sides, is the Iranians front and center continue to have capabilities to strike targets in the Strait of Hormuz. And that is an important card that Iran still has.
Absolutely. All right. So to you now, Vera, because, again, back to this whole back and forth, Vance goes, doesn't goes. This morning, the president told our own MS Now's Jackie Alemany that Vance would not be going to Pakistan this week. Then you have two senior U.S. officials later telling MS Now Vance is, in fact, leading the U.S. delegation. And then there's the new report in your paper today, Vera, on the fears that may be behind Trump's public bravado on the war, citing White House officials who say that top aides urged Trump to limit interviews with reporters because he's only convincing the public that he's sending contradictory messages. So let's look at what he's done today alone, right? He's done phone interviews, MS Now, ABC News, New York Post, Fox. What is the biggest concern among White House officials?
I think what they're concerned about, again, is that depending on who the president is trying to reach, it really depends what audience he's speaking with. And it just depends on the day, it depends on the hour. So, if he's trying to speak, we've seen him make these really maximalist, unprecedented threats, threatening to wipe out an entire civilization. I'm going to bomb civilian infrastructure. That's clearly a message to the Iranians. It's meant, we're told that it's, he tells them this is meant to scare them. If I seem almost, unpredictable and unstable in some ways, if I make these really maximalist threats, it might, force them to come to the table. If he's actually speaking to try to calm markets or to a domestic audience that hasn't really, that's pretty skeptical of this war, he sounds completely different. And again, same president, different audiences. And then we're left to kind of figure out, does he mean what he's saying? Is he trying to send a message to a different public? And I think that's kind of what we're seeing today with the prelude to these talks.
The challenges of interpreting an erratic president, I mean, it's really very difficult. Let's go to you, Seth, with Iran's parliamentary speaker who led talks with Vance last weekend and said that Iran was, quote, victorious in the field and is far from a final deal. So given the past interactions between Iran and the Trump administration, would Iran even get in the room if Vance is not leading the U.S. side?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, it would depend on who is there. I mean, certainly if Steve Witkoff and if the president's son-in-law are there, I think those are still very serious negotiators and people with the ear of the president. I mean, I do think at the end of the day, Iran's economy is in shambles right now. There are a range of incentives for the Iranians to start to wind this war up. The 10-point plan outlines some of them. It wants money, it wants the removal of sanctions, and it wants an end to the regional conflict, including the one in Lebanon right now. It's probably not going to get, it isn't going to get everything that it wants, but I think there are incentives for Iran to not have this drag out, again, because its economy and its military, for that matter, have been degraded pretty seriously.
Mm-hmm. Vera, so that fascinating report by your colleagues that I just cited, it also says that the president is veering between belligerent and conciliatory approaches and grappling behind the scenes with just how badly things could go wrong. It also offers some details about Easter weekend when that American fighter jet was shot down over Iran and the search was on for the missing airman. A senior administration official told the Journal Trump screamed at aides for hours and aides kept him out of the room as they got minute-by-minute updates because they believed his impatience wouldn't be helpful. What more have you learned about that?
Again, I mean, I think it does show that even though he projects all of this bravado in public, and on Truth Social, we see him put out all these statements. And again, I think it's important to remember this is a president who declared victory 2 days or 1 day basically into the war. Weeks and weeks ago, he said, we've already won. We've done everything we set out to do. And he's kept saying that week by week as the U.S., continues this war and as the war drags on. So I think, these statements and this confidence that he's projecting in public, what my colleagues really illuminated there is how behind the scenes, obviously, he's really worried about the domestic fallout. It's a midterm year. He's worried about, the economic fallout. He's worried about what's going on with allies. So, despite all these, very confident statements that we keep seeing, and more importantly, the fact that he keeps approaching these negotiations from a position of victory, he thinks Iran is coming from a position of surrender. And that's obviously not how the Iranians are seeing it. So I think kind of peeling back that curtain is quite useful to show that he is aware of some of those risks and, the balance he has to strike here.
And to that end, Seth, that point she's making, plus given the belligerent and conciliatory swings with Trump, do you think a deal can be realistically made tomorrow, or will this go on for maybe months?
Well, I don't see both sides being that close right now to resolving some of the key issues on sanctions removal and ending regional conflict, particularly Lebanon, which the Israelis have pushed back on pretty hard. So I don't see a deal emerging that will likely stay in place, at least within the next day or two. I think we're going to need some more time for negotiations. And again, just coming back to his Iranian capabilities, there are a number of U.S. officials who have said the Iranians don't hold any cards. That's just not true right now with the weapon systems that Iran still has available. Again, 40% of its arsenal of attack drones and roughly 60% of its missile launchers still intact. That's a lot of capabilities and leverage they still have in the Strait of Hormuz.
So if you don't think there's a diplomatic resolution imminent, Seth, does that mean, 3 days left in this ceasefire? The return is to military action?
It's possible there'll be a return to limited military action. I mean, the U.S. does have pretty much everything it needs in place in the region, from carrier strike groups to forces on the ground that can fire standoff weapons. But we've also seen with the U.S. president that we could see another ceasefire and another 2-week time period for negotiations to continue. That is also a strong possibility.
Yeah, I guess we will have to wait and see. Seth Jones, Vera Birkengruen, thank you both so much.